This is a video on a very urgent and serious topic, which is the ongoing siege that white America, Urugus, are enforcing against the black people in America. And the latest episode in this genocide of white people against black is in the shooting in Buffalo, where a Urugu massacred 10 black people in a grocery store in Buffalo, New York. Now, what's important is that we address this issue in the proper context, because if we don't address it in that context, we will be confused and we'll just reproduce the problems that created this situation. So essentially what we're going to talk about is how this killer, this Urugu, is representative sample of the white community in his ability to not only articulate a vision of a white nation, but to militarize and act on that vision.
Yeah.
And what we have to understand is what's happening in America right now is the white population, because of their genetic anxiety and because of the environment of scarcity that they find themselves in currently, are purging America of all black people. And as black people, as African people, I should say, we have to understand that as long as we exist outside of our cultural homeland, we will always be made to struggle and fight, and we will always be made to endure the oppressive presence of these Urugus.
Right.
So, you want to jump in?
This is also something that we talk about constantly in our videos, and people kind of dismiss us and they think we're crazy, they think we're being overstating and just, you know, doing the most. Always talking about white people, always white, and it's like, this is why we talk about these topics, because we understand, we know white people, we studied them enough to know that this type of stuff is not only going to just continue, but it's going to worsen. We read the manifesto. We have it on our computer. Like, we know these things. We value understanding what our enemies have planned for us.
Right.
So when we bring these topics to our people, this is not about trying to get views or trying to any of that. This is strictly trying to, the only way we know how to communicate to our people what's happening in the assembly and in the minds of our enemies, which are white people.
Yes.
And until we understand and until we grasp what we're dealing with, who we're dealing with, we are going to end up in the wrong place at the wrong time. I know.
And when we say the wrong place, that place is always America.
Absolutely.
You know, meaning it doesn't matter if you're at church, it doesn't matter if you're at school, it doesn't matter if you're at the grocery store.
Right.
If you're in America, you are behind enemy lines. And we have to start valuing African spaces. And the first step in valuing African spaces is rejecting and escaping the jurisdiction of our enemies.
Right.
So throughout this video, we're going to bullet by bullet, as my wife said, we've read the killer's manifesto, and what we're going to do is we're going to state different passages that he wrote in his manifesto, and out of that we're going to give you an African-centered analysis on how we are to properly respond and act based on this information.
Right.
So the first quote that was featured in the killer's manifesto was that he wanted to show the replacers that as long as the white man lives, our land will never be theirs, and they will never be safe from us.
So these are quotes that we got specifically from the manifesto.
And I'll repeat that: to show the replacers, and the replacers is Africans, black people,
right.
Anybody who isn't white.
Black people in America.
Black people in America, to show them that as long as the white man lives, our land will never be theirs, and they will never be safe from us. Now, what we have to underscore in this statement is he says, as long as the white man lives. He didn't say as long as there's a Republican majority in the Congress. He didn't say as long as white people have a voting bloc.
Right.
He didn't say as long as white people have the majority of the wealth. He said as long as white man lives, meaning as long as there's breath in his body, you will not be safe.
Right.
Now, for African people, that's clearly he's saying, unless you have the capacity to kill me, I will kill you. Now, as African people, again, we have to ask ourselves, are we militarizing in America?
Absolutely
Do
not.
we have black militias in America?
Absolutely not.
Do we have black transportation infrastructure in America? Do we have communication infrastructure in America? Do we have media production in America?
Right.
I'm listing these things because these are things that exist when you have a population that is prepared for war. Black people in America are not prepared for war. So if they're not prepared for war and they're not prepared to retreat, it seems as though they're prepared to die. And that's something that's unacceptable if you're an African.
Right.
If you're an African, what you do is you position yourself in the most advantageous position so that you and your family can survive
Yes.
to fight another day.
Yes.
So what we're not advocating for is fleeing. We're advocating Black people use their strategic mind and ask themselves, based on the conditions and the environment in which I live, what is the most reasonable, smart, intelligent thing to do?
Right.
And staying in America is not one of those
It
things.
absolutely is not.
Yes.
Absolutely is not. And,
Yes.
and these are things that there are white people in the country that believe this in his manifesto. Okay? So regardless of what you think, understand that this is what the people who want you dead think. They consider you a replacer.
Yes.
So why would you want to be in a place where they give you those labels? Like,
Yes.
why?
Yes.
It's not worth it.
Yes.
It's not. And the more scarce things become in America, the more you're going to see this Yorugu Asili come to the surface. This is what we've been talking about. We've been saying this for years.
Yes.
For years we've been saying this. And like I said, people thought we were crazy. We literally just want to save our people. So when we see these type of stories happen, it pains us because it's not them, it's us. They're killing us, me, my husband, my child.
Yes.
That's us.
Yes.
That's you.
Yes.
So when you look at us as a whole and stop fragmenting us, this hits on a different level.
Right.
And it makes you move.
Right.
It makes you move.
Right. This is a form of collective punishment.
Yes.
And collective punishment, by the way, is a tactic usually enforced by an occupying force against an occupied force.
Yeah.
So look at what Israel does to the Palestinians. When a single Palestinian upsets an Israeli, they don't just hunt for that Palestinian. They destroy entire towns.
Yes.
They raze houses to the ground. And what we've been witnessing as Black people ever since we first landed in the concentration camp that is America is this consistent policy of collective punishment as a way of white people expressing their genetic anxiety and their desire to keep Black people under their boots as long as they're in their presence. They do not know how to coexist. They do not know how to be agreeable.
No.
They only know violence.
Right, and this is regardless if you think that's their land or not.
Yeah.
That don't matter.
Yeah.
Because you don't have the weapons to combat that argument that it's your land.
Exactly.
So let them keep the land because it's not more important in your life.
Exactly. Quote number 2, and again, this is from the manifesto of the killer. And he writes, there is no non-white living in white lands that is innocent. Okay? He didn't say there is no white living in non-white lands that is innocent unless he has a degree in neuroscience, unless he has a degree in marine biology, unless he's cool with white people,
Unless he's in a fraternity.
Unless he's in a fraternity.
That-
No, he says there is no non-white living in white lands that is innocent, meaning he understands what side of the chessboard he's on, and everybody on the opposite side of the chessboard is his enemy.
Yes.
Now, as Africans, if someone is looking at you as their enemy, it is not strategically smart to try to endear yourself to that person to try to be their friend. Because remember, he's not talking for himself. As he writes in his manifesto, he says, I represent millions of ethno-nationalist Europeans who feel that they are being replaced. Okay, now if this wasn't a representative sample, we have to ask, why do we see so many militias in America?
Yes.
Why do we see so much endorsement of the same ideologies that he was pushing in his manifesto? This is showing that this is not a mere incident that you can isolate. This is one part, one facet of a very complex and broad military strategy that is being implemented by white people for the explicit purpose of annihilating the Black population in America.
Period.
Okay, and this has always been the policy, and until we understand that, incidents like the one that happened in Buffalo will continue to happen.
It will continue to happen.
Okay.
And that's goes into the next point.
Okay, the next point is schools, courts are areas where CCW, and that's concealed carry weapons, are outlawed or prohibited, may be good areas of attack.
Soft targets is what he calls
Yes, yes.
it. AKA places where Black people are congregating where ain't nobody likely to have a gun.
Yes, and this is a huge wake-up call for parents. Parents, if you are enrolling your child in a public school, whether that be in a school with white people or Black people, You have to understand you are putting your child at risk of being massacred in a shooting like this.
It's not the time, y'all.
Now, we're talking about a country where there's abundant precedent of school shootings. Think of Sandy Hook. Think of what happened in Parkland, Florida. Now you have, on top of that, you have an energized white nationalist population who have just gotten instructions from one of their foot soldiers on how to not only implement a killing, but how to prepare for that killing, how to map out the scene before the killing,
what gear to wear, what helmets to wear,
what helmet to wear,
how many guns, the best weapons to use.
Right.
He listed it out, 180 pages. He was not playing.
And if we are in possession as two Africans of this manifesto, you can guarantee that his white comrades are in possession of the manifesto.
They passing it out.
And they're passing it around, and they're highlighting targets, and I can promise those targets, many of those targets are soft.
Absolutely.
You know, and so as parents who are invested in the genetic survival of our children, we have to make it a priority to withdraw them from any state-run or white-run institutions, because these are places, danger zones. These are not zones that are safe for our children.
Absolutely.
And we have to begin to think militarily, and that means not just exiting their schools, but exiting their nations. Because the nations and the schools operate under the same umbrella, and that's the umbrella of black genetic annihilation.
Absolutely.
All right. This is the next quote from the manifesto. Minorities are never treated well. Do not become one. And this just underlines why it's so important to be in Africa. And we say this all the time.
Yeah, we do.
We are not just a global majority, but when you're in Africa, you have visual confirmation of that fact. Meaning, us living in Tanzania, we don't have to interact with white people. We don't have to consume their media. We don't have to consume their clothing and fashion and all of their ways of living. We don't have to do that. And we underestimate the power that comes with that. Because when you have the power of cultural independence, you also have the power to defend yourself. You have the self-esteem that's necessary to act when you're faced with a dangerous situation. But when you're indoctrinated and socialized in a white environment as a minority, you always want to be integrated and assimilated into that dominant culture. And this is why you see so many black people standing paralyzed in a concentration camp, because that subconscious part of their mind is still telling them that life isn't worth living unless white people approve of it. And what we're seeing is the cost of that seeking, the cost of that need for approval is the life of us and our children. You know, elders were killed in this incident. So he's killing off the people in African environments who are responsible for cultural transmission. There is no cultural transmission without the elders or the children. And the elders or the children are the people in the soft targets. So we have to begin thinking about this from the perspective of this is an attack on African sovereignty. This is the attack on our ability to begin building nations. But we can only begin to build nations when we immerse ourselves in the cultures of people who share our genetic heritage.
The land.
The land of our origin.
We have to be on our land. And I don't want people to get misconstrued. Don't go off of what you see white people talking about in public about this incident, this massacre that happened, this genocide that is going on. Because I can guarantee you, behind closed doors, they're passing that video around and they're laughing. They're praising it because that white boy made sure, mind you, this is not a white man, this is a white boy. This is an 18-year-old, which means he can't drink and he can't run a car. He is a child. So this is a boy. He went and made sure to put, this is your reparations on there. So these white people are proud of him, okay? They like that he did this. They're watching these videos and looking at it as if they would watch their video game. So this is exciting for them. They like this. This is energizing for them. And meanwhile, you just on Instagram, like nothing happened. You don't even realize what's happening and who you're around. This has to stop. This is a war, y'all. Like, this is not a game. We didn't come and risk our lives, our family, our friends. We didn't do this for fun. We didn't do this so we could vlog and be in, like, we didn't care about none of that. We trying to get our people out of America before it's too late. It's gonna become a time where you ain't gonna be able to get out, and these videos are gonna be pointless at that point.
Yes. And the broadcasting of the murders, you have to understand the propaganda value of that. this is another military aspect of the attack.
Yes.
When you have a military, it's not sufficient just to kill the enemy. You have to inspire
other people
in your camp that killing the enemy is righteous and good, that you're actually being heroic.
This is why he live streamed it.
And this is why he live streamed it. So we have to understand all of the preparation that he put into this attack signifies just how widespread and just how normalized the murder of black people is in America. And again, ask yourself, do you want to raise your children in a society where the murder of black people is not just normalized but celebrated as a virtue, basically? Okay, this is the weaponization of white culture.
Yes.
This is basically taking white culture and using it in a way that promotes their genetic survival.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Yes, because they have a genetic fear of annihilation.
Yes.
This is what this is about. It's in his manifesto. He talks about that he doesn't like that white people aren't producing enough. And we've said this before. We say this all the time, and people think we crazy.
Yes.
We like I said, we study them, and when we read his manifesto, we knew exactly what he was talking about. Because he said it. It's in their books. They write about it.
And this is why they're trying to outlaw abortion.
Yes.
Not because they don't want black women to get abortion.
Yes.
As my wife said,
Yes.
that will always be available to black mothers.
Right.
They don't want white women to get abortions.
That's
Okay.
it.
So these politics, you have to remember, we have to approach them from an African perspective, or we're not going to understand what they're talking about. All right. So the next point is, and this again, quote from the manifesto: we could deport or otherwise destroy the entire population of invading non-Europeans in a week if we as a race chose to. And this reminds me of a quote from Dr. Bobby Wright in his book Psychopathic Racial Personality, and he says Africans in America are 5 minutes from slavery. So he's saying the white population of America, they have the infrastructure, they have all the blueprints and the technology and the coordinates that they need to annihilate you within a week. Okay? Now that statement alone, whether or not you agree with the killer, because again, we all as African people despise the killer, but let's look at objectively what he just said. He said within a week they could destroy you. Now, the only way you can read that statement and be content with it is you would have to convince yourself that this population of people that has consistently murdered you since you landed somehow got within their hearts not to kill you collectively. And that makes no sense. Logically, ask yourself, with the scarcity, with the genetic anxiety, with the growing population numbers of non-white people,
with the images that they're putting out of black people as being evil and monsters and trying to take their land and stuff.
Yes, with all these images being circulated, it only makes sense that the technology that whites have built up will be used to the same purpose as everything else they do, which is white domination.
Period.
And so we have to understand, when he says that they could be annihilated, the non-white population could be annihilated within a week. Ask yourself, could that happen on the African continent? Could the African population in any black majority country be annihilated within a week, where the Africans control the military, where the Africans control the media, where the Africans control the transportation infrastructure?
Right.
You see, these kind of essentials is what, when the Africans control the water supply. You see, all of this goes into, again, thinking about our safety in a way that is rational and not emotional.
Right.
Because what's happening now is we're so overwhelmed with emotions that we don't know how to respond. But people who are seeking true freedom, they know how to separate the emotion from the actual, what the situation is calling them to do.
Right. And this is not racism, this is genocide.
Yes.
And racism is not everywhere. Racism is not everywhere. Because I know a lot of black people like to say, well, racism is all over the world. No, it's not. You cannot name and reference incidents like this happening on the continent, where a white person can go into a African country and just start shooting up people. Like, calm down. Stop using excuses as to why you don't want to move. I know it hurts. I know you're used to being abused by this country, but you have to find it in yourself to value your life enough to move.
Yes, value your life and your offspring's life, your family's life. Because when we do things, we aren't just acting for ourselves, we're acting for our families. So as parents, this it is inexcusable at this point to content yourself with living in a nation
Yeah.
that has literally only shown you killing, murder, terror, ever since you've gotten violence, and
abuse.
Everything that happens that isn't in that line, it's a preparation or a misdirection so that they could do it later on.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So this is just about being clear on our history and being clear on our assignment, you know, as Africans. And our assignment as Africans is to advance African culture and values, and not the values of our enemies. So the last point, and this again from the manifesto, and he ends it. This is actually the parting words that he puts. And he says, "Goodbye, God bless you all, and I hope to see you in Valhalla." So Valhalla, this is a reference to Nordic mythology, this idea that after you die, you go into a land of warriors and you fight war eternally, and where your wounds heal and you return to the battlefield to fight again. Now,
basically like a video game.
Like a video game. So we have to ask ourselves, what is this telling us about the Yurugu Asili? This is telling us that the Asili of Yurugus is built on violence to the point that they don't know how to exist peacefully. And this is what it means when we say white people are psychopaths. This is what Dr. Bobby Wright meant when he said they have a psychopathic racial personality, meaning these are people who derive meaning and pleasure out of the murder of Africans.
Absolutely.
Because through the murder of Africans, they're promoting the illusion that the white human is anything other than a mutant.
Right.
Okay, that's what they're promoting. So that kind of realization that they're a mutant, it forces them to war against the humans of the earth, the life of the earth. Anything that is life-centered, they want to attack.
Right.
And so as an African living in America, you're acting against that life-centeredness within yourself. You cannot manifest your true power as a man or a woman when you're in the presence of people whose culture demands that you reject life. You know, at every level, whether it's nature, whether it's the food, or it's the people themselves.
Right. And I think it's crazy because we recently saw that before the Yoruba boy went and killed all the people in the grocery store, he was chopping it up with a black man, talking. He bought him a drink. They had a whole dialogue. The black boy called him a genius, and so. This just goes to show that white people, they will sit and talk to you. They like to play with their prey before they consume it.
Yes.
So don't get confused and mixed up with white people trying to come and talk to you. And listen, this is an escape. It's time to escape. It's time, okay? Because these people are not going to stop. It's going to get worse. It's going to get worse.
Institution of these concealed carry weapon laws. This is about militarizing white areas, white rural areas on the perimeter of black areas, so that when they get the signal, they can converge on the black population.
They have you concentrated.
So this is the concentration camp model. You know, first you herd all the enemies into a small space, that's the city, and then you militarize the outskirts. So now what you have is the convergence. You have the white militarized militias on the outskirts moving in on the black people in the interior. And what we're saying is, before that happens, you have to get out, because you don't have a military force to withstand that attack. Okay, this is not about what you think your ancestors want, but because we're saying our ancestors didn't want anything more than us to perpetuate their bloodline. You know what I'm saying? You're not acting in a way that will sustain the bloodline of your ancestors when you disarmed stay in a place where you know people with superior arms are about to converge.
Exactly. Yeah. So we hope this helped. We have, like I said, we have the manifesto. If you want to read it for yourself, you can DM us. They trying to take it off the internet, so we'll see how that works. But either way, we need to understand we have to start studying our people. We have to start studying these people and getting away from them. Get away. Get away. You are a minority there, and it's not safe.